Welcome to the 2021 NCAA Women's Final Four Beyond the Baseline Virtual Speaker Series. I'm Jenny Carnes, Executive Director of the San Antonio Local Organizing Committee, leading the local planning effort for this year's return of the championship. Beyond the Baseline is a series of exciting opportunities focused on providing professional development through panel discussions that dive into different types of culture with coaches, administrators, professional athletes, business leaders, and educators. Today's panel centers on building an inclusive sports culture and features some amazing individuals with unique experiences and perspectives. San Antonio is thrilled and honored to host the highest level of women's college basketball for the third time when the Women's Final Four returns to the Alamodome next April 2nd through the 4th. In addition to hosting championship basketball, we are committed to serving our community through legacy events and programming. Read to the Final Four has launched across San Antonio, engaging thousands of third graders in a reading bracket challenge this semester. The Women's Final Four Dream Court will break ground in the coming days at the East Side Boys and Girls Club with a ribbon cutting scheduled for the week of the championship, unveiling a new multi-sport court that will be available to the community. And besides offering unique virtual events, our Beyond the Baseline campaign has partnered with the Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas with a commitment to offer a way to experience this incredible event while providing programming and unique curriculum. While March and April will certainly look different due to these unprecedented times we are all experiencing, our commitment to the NCAA and to the student athletes and coaches who will participate in the 2021 tournament remains the same. San Antonio is prepared to host the best event possible this year. Now sit back and settle in as you are about to be treated to an incredible discussion with some amazing women.
As the CEO of Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas, I'm excited to partner with San Antonio Sports to support the 2021 NCAA Women's Final Four, and more importantly, to support our local Girl Scouts. Our mission is to build girls of courage and confidence and character who make the world a better place. Taking part in events and programming surrounding the Final Four, meeting student athletes, and more importantly, being able to attend the games, that perfectly aligns with our mission.
I want to experience the Women's Final Four in San Antonio.
Thank you, Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas, for your partnership. A great transition to introduce our moderator for today's panel. Major General Angie Salinas, retired U.S. Marine Corps, is the CEO of Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas. She was the first ever Latina selected and promoted to General Officer in the Marines. And my favorite part of her background, she started her college basketball program at Dominican University of California. Major General, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny. I am so excited to be part of today's incredible panel of groundbreaking women, athletes, and coaches as we discuss building an inclusive sports culture. So let me get right to the punch here. Let's introduce our panelists. First, we have Dr. Stacey Johnson, a groundbreaker for women. She was a member of the 1980 U.S. Olympic fencing team. She's been president of the U.S. fencing team from 2000 to 2004. She led the international effort to add women's saber event to the 2004 Olympic Games. She's a former campus president of Valencia Colleges. Next, we have Coach Rose Monday. She's the head track and field coach for the Olympic Games for Tokyo 2021. She was the assistant coach for the Olympic Games in 2012 and 2016. She's a 2001 World Masters champion in the 800 meters. She's a collegiate national indoor champion in the 800 yards. She's founder and head coach of Texas Elite Track Club. Next, we have Ms. Sophia Young Malcolm, 2005 NCAA basketball champion with Baylor University. She has scored 2,000 points. She grabbed 1,000 rebounds. She's collected 300 steals and 300 assists in her NCAA career. She's one of only 4 women to accomplish this incredible achievement. She's part of the WNBA San Antonio Silver Stars for 9 seasons, and she was named to the Western Conference All-Star team 3 times. And she's a former varsity girls head basketball coach at Cornerstone Christian Schools. And last but not least, of course, is Miss Kendra Chambers. She's a 2016 World Indoor Track and Field Indoor Championship team member. She's an Olympic trials finalist in 2016. She's part of the University of Texas track and field athlete. She's a 4-time Big 12 indoor track and field champion, and she's currently training for the 2021 Olympic trials track and field. I'm totally starstruck, and no, if we were having this session today in person, I'd be the first one online to get photos with each of you. I know that you're the role models for all of our Girl Scouts to look up to. So let's get started. So in early 1980, the U.S. President Jimmy Carter began circulating the idea of the U.S. boycotting the 1980 Summer Olympic Games to be held in Moscow in July of that year. For several months, athletes were in limbo. For many, their sport had not even been selected to the Olympic teams, and athletes were struggling with their motivation to train and prepare. Ultimately, the United States and more than 60 other countries chose not to send athletes to the U.S. Olympic Games. Stacey, you were part of that opportunity to go to the 1980 Olympics. How would you describe the culture in the sport of fencing when you made that Olympic team in 1980?
Well, Major General Salinas, I'm going to answer your question, but I really want to start this out by thanking you for your incredible leadership journey and for your outstanding service. And also to thank you for your current work with the Girl Scouts and ultimately for choosing San Antonio as your home. We're very lucky. And I also just want to recognize the other panelists as well, because it's a real honor to be with all of you today. So back to your question. Well, at that time, women were very much in the minority in my sport, but not only in my sport, but in the society at large. In fencing, women were only allowed to compete in one discipline, and that was foil on the Olympic program. And men had 3 weapons from which to choose, and that included foil, epee, and saber. But to kind of set the context of the time period, in the 1970s, in high school, that's when I was going to high school, I graduated in 1974, when it would rain, the girls had to go downstairs and play jacks, and the guys got the gym. So, and that was really kind of the way it was in many respects for women in sports. But in 1972, of course, Title IX passed. And although it did take a few years to kind of really get enacted into the universities, by 1975, I was part of the first of 200 women in the state of California to get a scholarship at San Jose State University, which was during my first year in college. And this was an incredibly exciting moment and really the beginning of a journey towards equity for women that we've been on ever since. And just a little sense before I finish answering this question, that we have made such tremendous progress. At the last Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, more than 5,000 women competed in 300 events, representing approximately 45% of all the athletes at the Olympic Games. So we've made a lot of progress.
So what was that culture? So, kind of going up into that period of time, that decision, what do you think the athletes, what was that experience by the athletes knowing that the boycott had occurred?
Well, I want to tell you, I first have to be very honest and describe to you my horror, my absolute horror of finding out about the boycott while I was still competing to make the team. I qualified for the team in April of 1980 at the last qualification event at Princeton University. And in May, the U.S. Olympic Committee voted not to go. And I was so angry and filled with anger at that time. And I really have Anita DeFranz, who was the chair of the Athletes Advisory Committee at that time, really helped a lot of the athletes channel their anger She organized us. We spoke against the boycott. I spoke really all over the country about that. She filed a suit that was not successful, but it gave us a way to start to use our athlete voice. And by the way, that was not the first time that I had used athlete advocacy. The first time was about apartheid in South Africa. There's a man by the name of Dr. Richard Labchek, who's at the University of Central Florida in the sports management program there. And he started a program in the 70s to get Olympic athletes to protest against apartheid in South Africa, and came to our team and spoke with us. And South Africa had invited us all there for a World Cup. And but there was one caveat: they were going to pay for everything, all the transportation, but we could not bring our Black teammates. So our team said not only no that we weren't going to South Africa, but we weren't going to go until apartheid was lifted. So I think you can see, as an athlete and a person faced with difficulties, you have to make decisions about how you're going to use these traumas and these moments to transform yourself in your own life and your own destiny. And I learned early on as an athlete, our voice is very important.
Well, Stacey, it sounds like this boycott not only took you from being an athlete, but really set you on your path for your life. I mean, you're a lifelong advocate now for the change. So how would you see that impacted, amateur sports? I mean, I know that this made a huge impact on your personal life, but how did the boycott have some kind of impact on our amateur sports?
Well, I really think that in the Olympic movement, there has been tremendous changes with issues of equity, and of course, of late, with certainly with human rights. And the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee have recently convened a 44-member athlete-led council called Team USA Council on Racial and Social Justice. And so there has been a lot of movement from that time period, but there's never been a time period that like we're in right now. And so I'm very interested to hear from our athletes and coaches about where we find ourselves.
Well, and that's really, I think, it's interesting, because really what you bring to the table in that experience is going to roll right into our next panelist as I move on to Ms. Rose. So, Coach, how do you think the culture has changed over the years since you were a college athlete, a master's athlete, and a college coach, and now this Olympic coach?
First of all, I also have to say I'm humbled and honored to meet you. I wish we were in person, because I'd want the picture with you, Major General. I have a son who's a lieutenant in the Army, and what an incredible accomplishment, as well as everybody else in this group. I'm just amazed. Well, I'm a couple of years younger than Stacey, just a couple. I was a freshman in high school when she was graduating from high school, and we didn't have a girls' track team, but I didn't notice anything different prior to that, because I could beat all the boys, and I just knew I'd love to run and beat all the boys. And my dad, in 8th grade, when I could beat all the high school boys on the block, took me to a age group track team, one of the top ones in Southern California, and signed me up. And so when I got to high school in 9th grade and they didn't have a girls' track team, my Spanish teacher, Art Venegas, who is one of the most prominent, well-known strength and throws coaches in the world, he's had several Olympic gold medalists. He was my Spanish teacher, and he's the one that said, "You have got some talent," and was probably my first mentor, other than, my dad pushing me in that direction, and said, "Let's start a girls' track team." So we had a good success in high school. It was a small, parochial school in Southern California. So I never did go to state, because I definitely was that developing athlete. But I grew up in Northridge, and ended up going to Cal State Northridge, which Art Venegas my Spanish teacher, had helped facilitate me getting in the back door, like on the team, because I wouldn't have been recognized to get on the team, because it turned out that the team was phenomenal. 80% of my college team made that 1980 Olympic team that Stacey also made. I didn't know it was that kind of a track team. Now, also notice this was also, women who were just a few years older than me, like Stacey, noticed differences in Title IX where I didn't. And this was one of the differences. I'm on a Division I track team. We were not allowed in the NCAA yet. We were AIAW, but I had a head coach that was a woman, so I never knew any difference. Okay, so only my junior year is when the women were so successful. By the way, just to step back, I was on my freshman and sophomore year. We won the national championships, Division I, and was phenomenal. And again, 80% of those women went on to make that 1980 Olympic team. I was not one of those, but from the beginning, I was in a high-end program where the coach gave us a piece of paper that said, this is how we have to qualify for nationals. And I'm thinking, wow, and another thing my coach said to me is, you're not going to run the 400, which I was kind of recruited to do. You're going to do the 800 because they went and took us to UCLA for a muscle biopsy. And it was determined that I was going to be an 800 meter runner, that I had 65% fast twitch and 35% slow twitch, which is ideal. And his exact words at that time, because the assistant coach was a male, he said, you will never beat the Russians and the East Germans. And so we're going to make you an 800 meter runner. And I remember thinking, I just want to beat that girl, Cal State Los Angeles. I still wasn't like thinking the way they were thinking, but I did know at a very young age that I wanted to be an Olympian. And I knew that I was fast and I knew that I loved this. And so now the junior year, we got led into the NCAA, and all of a sudden I saw a shift in the paradigm of women. Now, all of a sudden, women were not head coaches anymore because the men became the head coaches, and they were oftentimes combined programs, and women lost jobs. Men were the ones that took the jobs, or the women were assistant coaches. Where they were a head coach previously, they're now the assistant coaches. And it kind of didn't really totally pick up on that at that age, but, retrospectively thinking on it, I picked up on it. I remember Track and Field News, which is known as the Bible of the sport, didn't have very many women articles in it. In fact, it was very minimal, and it was all men. And I remember thinking, why aren't there women? And they had kind of a lesser publication for women that looked like it was produced on a copy machine, not a nice magazine. And then after I graduated from college, I started to train for the Olympics. And so I did not compete in the 1980 Olympic trials. I was not even close to qualifying at that time. I wasn't developed yet. So the 1984 Olympic trials were my first Olympic trials, 84, 88, and 92. I competed. And in the 1984, after the Olympic trials, my coach encouraged me to get involved actively in Athletes Advisory Committee. So I attended my first annual meeting for USA Track and Field, which at that time it was called the Athletics Congress. And I went to Athletes Advisory, and they were who in track and field. I felt very much like, gosh, I don't even belong with these athletes. And I was elected to the Athletes Advisory Committee. I was also elected to the board of directors for USA Track and Field representing athletes, and to the long legislation committee, because I always thought I would be a lawyer and go into that. But the point I want to make about the women was, the women mentors there, all of a sudden, like I said, I never really saw a gap. The women were mentors, and I remember stumbling into looking at the agenda and went into an executive committee of women's track and field that was actually a closed meeting, but it said closed. I didn't know if it meant the doors closed or no, I don't know. I was 23 years old. I just went in and sat down, and they never kicked me out. And not only did they not kick me out, but Dr. Evie Dennis and, Pat Rico and Terry Crawford and all these great women who had gone before me and had won, multiple championships and been Olympic coaches. And they just basically embraced me and said, this is how you affect change. They saw a live one, I think, like, this girl is passionate and she wants to do that. So also at that time, the head coach for the 1984 Olympic team was Brooks Johnson, and he is a huge supporter of women and women of color. And he was on the executive committee of women's track and field, which I then became a member of that committee as an athlete rep. And he he realized in 1984 that a male should never be ahead of a women's Olympic team or a world championship team. There are so many phenomenal women, talented coaches that we do ourselves a disservice. And so now that I am chair of track and field, I am now in that position to, make sure we have gender, racial equity on these staffs, but that it's not written anywhere, but the head coach of the Olympics and the World Championships, will be a woman. And if it's a situation like the indoor worlds or when some of the other teams, there's a plethora of teams, also the Pan American teams comes under this kind of quiet rule, that we would, if it's between a man and a woman and the woman is absolutely qualified, we're not going to put someone there because they're not qualified. Obviously, we're putting our best out there at the international teams, and we're not going to send our best athletes to the Olympics or the World Championships with a staff that's not qualified. But if there's a woman in that place, it will be a woman. So those are the changes that I've seen. And then as an athlete, like I said, in college, I didn't notice anything different. In fact, I even thought, we had it better because we were Division I and the men were Division II. And then as an elite athlete, I felt like I traveled all over the world for free and got paid to do it and did everything that everybody else did. You don't know what people are getting paid. I do know now that I got paid considerably less than the male counterparts on the European circuit, but I didn't know exactly how much you're getting less. And I don't think that's the case now. So to answer Stacey, your question, I think it's now equal pay for all these diamond leagues, and it's all transparent what the athletes are getting.
Well, Coach, I just listening to the two of you, Stacey, and of course yourself, I just realized all three of us are graduates of universities or colleges in California. And so I can't help but wonder if like our progressive opportunities, our passion for kind of wanting to change the world all came from, California in the early years. So very, very cool. And I got to tell you, just the power though of a role model, I think as a young athlete, you really want to look to that somebody looks like me. So I have to ask, are there any advantages to being a female coach?
I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I really have to sometimes think about this question because, sometimes you see the disadvantages when you're the only female in the room, and there's only a handful of women coaches that coach at my level, and it's unfortunate. So the advantages are, yes, I can be a role model to females, and I'm thankful for the females that were my role models. And I think if they see me that, hey, she could do it. And I came from very much a working class background in California, 5 brothers and sisters. I shared a bed with a sister till I got married. There were 4 girls in one room. And just, if you believe in yourself and that, hey, put your dream out there and you go after it, but you see other women doing it, like everyone on this call, sometimes you don't see it because most of the track coaches are males. And at UTSA, I coached men and women, and they were 2 separate programs. And at one point, my kids were athletes and they were in high school. And I was also coaching the international teams with USA Track and Field. And I was very involved in all of the politics. And I realized, okay, I have too much on my plate. I'm going to have to give up one or the other. And it was really difficult because I loved both group of kids, but I gave up the men, and they're probably the easiest ones to coach. I'll have to be honest. when they're upset, they break up with their girlfriend, they leave it over there on the other side of the track, and they come in and they get their workout done. When the girlfriend breaks up with the boyfriend or she's upset about something, they carry the weight of the emotions on their body, and it's like, it's harder to coach women. But I realized at that moment that I had a responsibility to women, and I needed to stay with the women's team when I gave up the men. Yeah.
Well, I think all that emotion, sometimes it really drives us to success. So I'm going to shift a little bit to Sophia and to Kendra, because I think they are probably the product of a lot of the work that the two of you put in as a result of just all the movement and all the changes. So I'm going to ask the two of you, how does a university's athletic department culture play a role in recruiting student athletes?
So Sophia, let's start with you. What about the culture at Baylor basketball inspired you to choose that university to attend?
Yeah, well, I could sit and just listen to Coach Rose and Dr. Stacey and you guys talk all day. It's just so fun to hear all your backgrounds and just everything about the things that you've gone through. And as a younger person, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just so amazing. So thank you all for sharing all that information with us. For me, whenever I first stepped onto the Baylor campus, I immediately felt within my spirit, like, oh, I love this place. And so whenever I was choosing a college, I wanted to feel that I belong there, coming from the Caribbean where I came from and being away from my family and knowing that, okay, I'm going to spend 4 years here. I want to make sure I kind of like this place. So that way I'm not just like, oh, I can't stand it here. So whenever I stepped onto that campus and got to meet Coach Mulkey and the coaching staff, I felt like, man, I really truly belong at this place. And I think, Coach, like you all are talking about being with a female, for me, that's what I was looking for at that time in my life. I needed a role model and I needed an example. So I got recruited by maybe like 2 or 3 different colleges, but not necessarily female coaches. And whenever I was introduced to Coach Mulkey, I just felt a connection. I felt that she can help me get to where I wanted to go in life. And I felt that, being that role model, like I felt like I can connect with her. I felt like I can relate with her. And she was definitely a mother figure for me at that point in my life.
So what was it that you learned there? Because you yourself have now become a coach. What did you bring? What did you bring to the table from that experience? And what did you add to your culture there in your coaching environment?
Absolutely. I think that one of the most amazing things about Coach Mulkey is the way that she cares about her athletes. And whenever I became a coach, I definitely try to embrace that. Now I've got to experience multiple coaches throughout my whole career. But one of the things that I wanted to be as a coach was a coach that the player can relate to. Not necessarily where I'm saying, okay, get on the court and do this, right? Because there's a time for that. But a player to where, or a coach to where if a player comes to me and say, hey, coach, I'm going through this situation outside of basketball. How can I handle this? Because I'm not just a coach. I am there to be an example to them. I'm there to be a mother figure, a role model, and somebody to help them in their lives, and not just like on the court, but situationally. And I think for me, Coach Mulkey helped me with that, and other people in my career has helped me with that. So I wanted to express that to my players to say, hey, I'm not just a coach. I'm here if you ever go through something in life. I was like, I promise you, I know of someone who has gone through what you're going through, dealing with young teenagers, where obviously the world revolves around them and nobody's ever going through what they're going through. So I wanted to make sure that they understood, like, hey, I've been through this, so you can always come and talk to me if ever you have an issue. So I wanted to carry that over because it was such an impact for me at Baylor.
So did you know what Coach Mulkey's background was?
I didn't know much. I didn't know much about
a groundbreaker. Did you?
No. And again, I came from the Caribbean and I went to high school in Louisiana. Didn't know much about Title IX and all the history about women's sports, and because obviously I was born in 1983, and at that point, we did everything in the Caribbean. There wasn't any type of boys can do this, girls can do this. We ran track. I was a 400 athlete, Coach Rose, and I run track, run volleyball, played volleyball, and multiple other sports, and there wasn't very much difference in like, okay, boys can do this and girls, at least not what I knew. And whenever I came to high school, there wasn't much difference also. And we always know that obviously the boys are stronger. They have more fans whenever it comes to the game in high school. And obviously even in college, there was always more fans for the boys. And so you started sensing, okay, there's a difference here. And it could be me that maybe because I wasn't born here, and not understanding all the history behind that. But as I grew older, I definitely was able to be exposed more and had a clearer understanding about that. But I didn't know much about Coach Mulkeys' history and, even all her championship in college and what she's done. But obviously we know how she's a legend. She's completely
now.
Yeah.
Well, Kendra, let me shift over to you. How about the same question? What about the cultures at UTEP and UT inspired you to attend those universities?
Sure. I think for me, I come from a Mexican family, so culture, the word culture is very deep and it means a lot to me. So when I was, looking at universities and trying to figure out, where I wanted to spend my career and my academic, years at as well, I was just looking for a place that, one, I felt like I could improve as an athlete, but also like the most important thing for me was academics, that they had my major, that they had networks and, tutoring and all of those things that make you a successful student athlete. My mother is a teacher and she's been a teacher for 25 years. So I was, the nerd in elementary school and I was getting straight A's and I bring back my report card like eagerly. I was just eager to learn. I've always been eager to learn, and education has always been the forefront for my family. So I wanted to make sure that, I received a good education as well, because I was putting in the hard work on the track that I felt, I could pick a place where education was going to be the forefront. And UTEP was an amazing experience. It's in my hometown. It was easy for family and friends to be supportive there. But as I found myself with a male coach there, I had a female coach in high school and saw a lot of success with her. And I felt like that place, at UTEP at the time just wasn't working very well. So I did decide to transfer to the University of Texas at Austin. And it's crazy because I never technically went on a visit to UT Austin, but I had been there several times because in Texas, the state championship is held at that university. And I was a state champion in my high school years. So I had been there, I had absorbed the splendor of the stadium and been to games and been, Texas is like, if you're a Texas girl, Texas is where you want to be. So I had experienced it already. So I felt like this is the place for me to go. And as soon as I, walked on campus and entered the doors, it was like excellence. It just screamed excellence, that no matter whether you're in the classroom or on the field, you were expected to win. You were expected to have a high GPA. You were expected to go to all of your classes. And I think, I really welcomed that into my life at that point, because for me, I really loved a challenge. And if I felt like at UTEP, I could kind of not go to class or kind of, do things where at Texas, the standard was very high. They had class checkers. I had, someone, making sure that I went to every single appointment. So again, the level of excellence was just raised. And I felt like, okay, this is going to be a challenge, but I accept it. And just everything along with Texas, as far as like the coaching staff, I was coached by a female coach, Beverly Kearney at the time, and she had, all women staff as well. And I think just having powerful Black women around me, having those positions at a university like Texas was just amazing. I got to, have meetings with the athletic director, Chris Polonsky. In the future, she, would write my recommendation letter for graduate school. So making those connections at a D1 top tier university like Texas was just amazing. And as a bright-eyed, transfer student, I was happy to make it my home. And I think the culture of excellence that was what persuaded me.
Well, so we're really excited because, of course, we have a very unique relationship here among the panel, because Coach Rose is actually coaching you, isn't she? So we know that 2020 has brought some incredible challenges to sports of all kinds, from cancellation of championships because of COVID-19 to athlete protest over social injustices. We have race inequality, police reform, etc. The Olympic boycott in 1980, these things really impacted training and motivation and ability for athletes and coaches to even stay focused in a really uncertain competitive landscaping. So we already know that the Olympics got, canceled last year, postponed, I guess. It's going to happen now. but considering your roles as a coach and as the athlete working together, can you each share your perspective of an experience that's going to force both of you perhaps to adjust your focus or the way that you trained or maybe even the way that you communicated? Coach, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So, it's a unique role that I play because I'm a personal coach of Kendra and 3 other athletes. And then I'm also the team coach for the entire Olympic team and also head of track and field. So I kind of come in and I bring to the table information that I know, as a coach. And so now if I just go to the personal coach part of it, we knew here in San Antonio as tracks were closing down all over the country with the pandemic, there was going to be a day. We were very, very fortunate and blessed here. We get 2 high school tracks that my children went to that we get access to during the day. And a lot of world-class athletes are struggling to find places to train. It's a problem. And a lot of college tracks will not allow professional athletes on the tracks. So we're blessed to be able to go to those schools during the day and we check in and everything. And so I knew one day we kept going for about 3 weeks when other people were all over the country shutting down. And my husband kept saying, what are you going to do the day the track is locked? And I said, well, we'll go over to Mount SOB. It's this killer hill. So these kids, Kendra had never been on that hill. And so sure enough, we go to get on the track and it's all locked up, like double locked. And sometimes we jump the fence. Even I jumped the fence, but or we squeeze. One time we had to squeeze through, and I thought, thank God I did that keto, because I was this big. Anyway, during this time, I had to do that. Anyway, so I felt like I was kicked in the gut. I just thought I planned for this, but I felt like I was kicked in the gut. So we all got in our cars and we headed over to Mount SOB. The kids wanted to call it the long term what SOB means, but I said, no, we can't do that. We have to call it SOB. It used to be called Mount Bertha, but then, running up this hill, it is a killer hill. So anyway, we go over there and Kendra says she has to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, we'll just go over there. There's an Aldacos, there's the Mormon temple. They won't let you in, but go to the Aldacos and go to, there's a running store and there's all kinds of shops there that weren't there when I coached at UTSA. This is the last time I ran that hill with my athletes when I coached at UTSA. And nobody would let her in because of the pandemic. She couldn't go in and go to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we can't even go to the bathroom. Then the stay-at-home orders came within 2 days of that you had to have mandatory stay at home. And in the meantime, the other hat I wear knows that there's no meets, that we're shutting down meets. Now, this is about a week or 2 before the Texas relays. And my athletes are ready to race. And we're only 2 months out from the Olympic trials. They are ready and they are fit and they're just did amazing time trials and we are on fire. And all of a sudden we have to slow down. And as a coach, and I know there's not any meets in sight, it's cruel and unusual punishment to put them through these hard killer workouts with no meets in sight. So what I did was what a lot of top coaches did was, you just got to take a step back and regroup and sort of put them in the fall training mode where I put them on an aerobic base so that they're really fit now. We'll put them on, go back to pretend like it's October, November, put them on an aerobic base because I can't even work with them. They're going to have to do training by themselves. Put them on an aerobic base. And then I'll know 6 weeks to 8 weeks out when a track meet's available and I can sharpen them up. And that's what a lot of people were doing, with the exception of a couple of the really high-end money clubs that didn't miss a beat during this time. And it also coincided with a death in the family of my mom. So it turned out for me personally, it was a blessing because I could go to my mom and see her before she passed away. But it was a little bit of a disaster for my athletes because it was very hard for them, not just them, but athletes across the world. It was hard for them to maintain motivation. And even though Kendra and I kept in touch and I talked to the athletes constantly and how did the workout go, tell me what your splits were, that type of thing. There was, this, I don't think they even realized that. Maybe they did realize that, and you can ask Kendra, but I don't know if they knew the stress that was on them. And And then we pile on, the civil unrest that came next. And it was kind of like a double or a triple whammy, kick in the gut. You can't go to the track anymore. Now you can't even train with your coach. And now there's all this civil unrest, and there's, it was very difficult. And I'll let Kendra talk, and then how we handled it afterwards.
So Kendra, I mean, obviously you're hearing from the coach, and she's looking at, kind of like taking care of the welfare and the mentality. And how about you? I mean, as the athlete, how do you prepare, and how have you gone through this?
Sure. I don't think any of us were prepared at all. And, we tried to get what we could. I went to academy to get weights so I could lift in my living room. And it's like, you just go on like autopilot. And I can absolutely agree with Rose, where we didn't even realize the stress that we were under at the time. And I think for us, it was so important just to maintain that communication with Rose. And she did such a good job just checking in, making sure we were doing our workouts. But it's like, we can't train with your team. You can't train, with your coach. You're alone. No one's going to know if you actually went and did your workout except you. And, you're frustrated. And for me, I was ready to run the best season of my life, and I was ready to make an Olympic team. And so for me, it was like also a kick in the gut, where it was devastating for me. I felt like I had lost something that I'd worked so hard for. And if anybody knows anything about training for Olympic trials, it doesn't happen in a year. It doesn't happen in 2 years. It's accumulation of years of hard work. And, I'm getting older, and a lot of, athletes and friends of mine were panicking as we texted each other and checked in. A lot of my peers retired because they just couldn't do one more year. And one more year seems like, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's one more year. But for us and our bodies and the sacrifices that we're making, it's incredibly hard to commit to another year of training for the Olympics. So I'm thankful to have Rose as my coach, and she's just been so amazing in guiding our team and how to navigate things. And in San Antonio, we've been able to find places to train as, things started to open back up. But I think just emotionally, like going through COVID, and then also the racial injustice issues that, came up in America, it was just a very heavy period, especially for Black athletes. And my concern was that in all of this, that a lot of the Black athletes would be the first out the box to say, okay, we know there's a pandemic, but you need to put your life at risk and go play because we need to make money. And so my athlete advocate, side turned on as well. So that made me on high alert, like, well, wait a minute. If everyone else is staying at home, why are you pushing the NFL and the NBA and the majority Black athletes to get back on the court or on the field or at meets? I think a lot of the athletic sponsors ended up realizing, we may not be able to force athletes to compete or to have meets. And a lot of agencies and coaches and everyone started to realize, yes, there's a global pandemic, and yes, we need to make sure that, everyone is healthy and prepared and has the right testing in place and all of that, and make sure our athletes are safe. But also, as the racial injustice started to come about, who are we putting out on the front lines to make sure that sports comes back at a rate that isn't realistic? And I think the leadership at the time in our country was trying to rush things and just trying to make it seem like it wasn't as bad. But that had a direct effect to the African-American athletes who are constantly putting our bodies at risk. And as I'm going through all of this emotion, I have, my coach, Rose Monday, trying to make sure that I can run, that I can perform, that I'm ready to race when that first meet comes up. So dealing with all of those things as an athlete who's training for the Olympic trials, it's definitely been a challenge. And I think we've all grown in this experience. And the best thing I can say about this experience was that I got more time to train. As things started to open up, I got more time to have mental clarity about my goals. And I got to recommit to another year of training for the Olympic trials and just give it my best shot. So I look at the silver linings, and there's a lot of bad definitely that happened during that time, but for the good, I'm just grateful that I'm healthy now and that there may be some meets this year, and we just keep pushing forward.
Well, wow. So I can't even begin to imagine just
just being that elite athlete, and what great role model that you are. And so I'm going to ask all four of you now, really, because I think this is just, again, incredibly impactful. But I want you to answer, what did you learn through sports that continues to influence you today? So we'll start with you, Miss Stacey.
Well, I think, and by the way, I just have to say, Kendra, my heart is pumping because you're taking me back to a lot of the feelings that I had in 1980. And what I did from that point on and have done the rest of my life, there's a great quote by a philosopher by the name of German philosopher Goethe. And what he says is, whatever you can do or dream, you can. Begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And I believe that. I mean, I never thought I could be president of fencing. I never thought I could serve on the executive committee for the U.S. Olympic Committee. I never thought I could be a college president. But at some moment, you say to yourself, I'm going for it. I can do it. And so having that spirit, and if you line up your body, mind, and spirit, there's very little that you can't do.
All right. Well, how about you, Miss Rose? What did you learn through sports that continues to influence you today?
I think you need to dream big. Like Stacey said, my dream was to be an Olympian, and I competed in 3 Olympic trials. And the most important thing, you dream big and you plan accordingly, but you have to know that success is a journey. It is not a destination. You've heard that before. It is not cliche. And you have to celebrate each one of those successes. It's so important, all those successes along the road. And I thought I was a failure after competing in 3 Olympic trials and never making an Olympic team. And yet I look back, I mean, who would have ever known that, it wasn't meant for me to be a 3-time Olympian as a runner. And now I'm a 3-time Olympic coach. So I put my dream out there. I planned for it. I worked hard. You have to work. You can't hide hard work, but you've got to put that dream out there. And I guess the other little piece I think is really important. You keep your circle of friends really tight, because there will be so many people that will tell you you can't do it. So if those are the people that say that, well, then you just kind of set them aside and you keep those positive people. Because if I told you how many people told me I could never become an Olympian, well, they were, I guess, technically right. But, I still was in 3 Olympic trials. That's a top 34 in the United States. And I was 9th in the Olympic trials. And, again, world champion, American record holder, and national champion. I never would have done those if I would have listened to all those people. And I certainly wouldn't be sitting here as a 3-time Olympic coach, for sure.
Wow. Well, let's go, Kendra. What did you learn through sports that continues to influence you today?
Sure. Being an athlete still, as I'm training now, I learn new things every day, I must say. But I think the overarching theme for my athletic career has definitely been I've learned to be disciplined and also to persevere. There have been times in my career where I felt like, wow, I'm injured. I don't know if I can do this. Or wow, I'm just tired, exhausted. I don't know if I can do this. And having that motivation to persevere and to just keep going. It's just a grind and a daily habit that you just have to get into, which discipline comes into. You have to eat right. You have to go to sleep early. You have to, and then now moving that towards, my life and other areas of my career, I feel like, wow, like compared to athletics, this is so easy. So taking those discipline and, discipline things that I learned from sport and now applying them to, my future job or a future career, or just being, an all around good person. I think sports just have so many things you can learn and take from being an athlete, and taking them and putting them into real life situations. I've learned to be very disciplined and to persevere no matter what comes my way. I feel like being an athlete has prepared me for pretty much anything I can encounter.
Awesome. Well, Miss Sophia, what did you learn through sports that continues to influence you today? And how does that impact your 3-year-old? Because I know you have a daughter, so I want to know what you're going to help. What are you going to use to influence her?
I have two of them, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old.
All right.
For me, because I was an athlete all my life, it's like sports is like all I know, right? And I think one of the biggest things that sports have taught me is about commitment and and I love being a part of a team. And I told my husband, I was like, I just want my kids to be a part of a team because there's so much to learn about being a part of a team. It's like sticking it out, especially when things get hard, when things get rough, and being a part of a team. And you know that, okay, well, we're trying to win a championship and you're not going to win every game, but how do you bounce back whenever failure comes? And so I know for me, even in marriage now, I take that whole commitment thing because we know we have to be committed in marriage. Right?
Yeah.
So even in marriage, it's like, okay, things are not really working out so well right now. So what are we going to do about it? Are you just going to throw in the towel and give up, or are you going to find a way to dig in deeper and fight and be a part of a team and know that your goal is to win a championship? And I remember playing at Baylor and just thinking like, we lost our first game to LSU and we had worked so hard and just knowing that we were going to win. And then we came out first game and lost. We're like, all right, now what? Like, how are you going to bounce back from that? And I feel like life is about that, is about bouncing back when things don't work out. Like, what is your end goal? And are you going to, are you going to commit? Are you going to commit to the goal? So for me and my 3-year-old right now, she's learning how to skate. And we're like, okay, well, if you're going to skate, you're going to be committed to learning how to skate. So every day you're going to practice for 20 minutes. Commitment, because we have a goal, right? We have a goal that she wants to have a skate party for her birthday. So by the time her birthday comes, she has to know how to skate. So it's like, all right, that's your goal. So we're going to practice every single day and be committed to it and stick it out. And she's fallen so many times. Like, yeah, get up. You got to get up. When you fall, you have to get up because we know that these things are going to occur in life and everything. So sports is my life. I don't have anything else to carry it from. It is all that I know. And so it's just to stick it out when things get rough, stick it out and know what the goal is and just keep your eyes on that prize.
Well, and I think that's the one thing that we all have in common, which is, of course, that concept of resiliency. And I think that's what I think all sports has taught any and everyone, is the ability to be resilient and to try to really learn that nobody can tell you no, and that except us. So here's the one. For the first time, the entire NCAA Division Women's Basketball Tournament is going to be held in one geographic location. That being said, it's going to be the San Antonio region. Oh my gosh. So I'm really personally incredibly excited because I have never been to like a Final Four. So I'm looking forward to this so much. So, but everybody's going to be coming to San Antonio, and you're all natives of San Antonio. You all lived here hundreds of years. What are you, so each of you, just what is that one can't miss activity or place that you would recommend to someone visiting San Antonio where they're here in town for the tournament? So let's start with you, Kendra. What's that one thing, one place that they've got to make sure they get to?
It's so cliche, but it's a must. You have to experience the Riverwalk, even if you do it once or twice or hundreds of times like I have. The water and you just feel like you're somewhere else. It just takes you just to an amazing place. The trees, the lights, the restaurants, the margaritas. It's perfect. Try it.
All right. So we got margaritas, and did I hear margaritas? Okay, good. All right. How about Sophia? Where's that one place?
Well, I mean, like Kendra said, obviously the Riverwalk is the place to go because of all the different locations and different restaurants there. I love the Riverwalk because it's like you can step into one restaurant and feel like you're in a whole different country or in a whole different world, and step into another one and you're like, oh my gosh, when did I get here? So obviously I think for us, the Riverwalk is it for me, for sure.
All right, Coach Rose.
I'm going to take them about 25 minutes north, 30 minutes north to the town of Boerne. Boerne has, they're coming to Texas, okay? And Boerne has a main street that even is called Hauptstrasse. It was settled by the Germans whenever, 1800s or something, maybe 1700s, I don't know. And quaint shops, quaint restaurants, quaint boutiques, and it takes you back in time. And of course I would want to go to the Riverwalk. I definitely would want to do, the traditional touristy things, because when they go home, people will say, did you do the Riverwalk? So you're going to have to do those for sure. But if you want to get a little bit of Texas, head on up to Boerne. It looks like it's spelled Bourne, and like Bourne, Texas, but it's pronounced Boerne, and it's quaint and fabulous food and restaurants, and walk along the streets. It's lovely.
All right. Well, how about you, Dr. Stacey Johnson?
Well, the educator in me is going to ask you to get a little history under your belts and to go visit the missions. Because really that's how the city was founded, was through the missions. And that, of course, includes the Alamo. But we have several other missions that are beautiful and worth seeing. And so take off on the mission trail.
Awesome. Well, I will tell you this, unfortunately, our time has come to a close. This has been absolutely fabulous. And I know that we could go on for hours and hours. I want to personally thank each of you for your time today, but I also really want to say thank you so much, sincerely, for everything you've done for women in sports and what you continue to do for our community.
I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authorities, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout.
The coaches you are hearing from today have instilled these same values in hundreds of student athletes over the years. As host committee, we strive to lead in the same way and represent our community and this event with these values in mind. Please donate today, and thank you for supporting San Antonio sports and the Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas. Angie, thank you so much for leading such an incredible and thoughtful conversation with these amazing women. That was one of the best hours I've spent in a long time, and I'm inspired to see this championship through over the next 2 months. We obviously continue to hope and plan for everything surrounding the NCAA Women's Final Four, and here is where you can help. A donation of just $10 or more to our Beyond the Baseline campaign will support Girl Scout programming and curriculum to better engage them in the benefits of sport and higher education, as well as Read to the Final Four and the Dream Court at the Eastside Boys and Girls Club. Please donate today. It's easy. Just visit our website at wffsanantonio.com/donate or scan the QR code you see on your screen now. No matter what the tournament holds for all of us, our commitment to you is to use your donation to serve our community and to host the Final Four teams and give them a national championship experience they will never forget. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to mark your calendars for Tuesday, February 23rd for our next Beyond the Baseline program, Building Organizational Cultures, brought to us by the Valencia College Peace and Justice Institute. Stay safe and take care.